And so we are going to go into the next segment of this podcast, and it's the marriage strategy of the week. We wanted to give you a practical tip that you can take away and implement this week with your spouse.
That's right. You can implement it right away and see really good results. And this week's strategy is something we like to call echoing. We have referred to this in previous teachings as mirroring, but because there's some other psychological practices that use that same terminology, we decided to rename it to get really clear about what we mean when we're talking about this strategy by calling it echoing. So what is echoing? Well, it's a communication strategy that you and your spouse can implement to make your communication with one another more effective. What does it mean, Victoria, to echo your spouse?
So what it means is when you are having a conversation, and this is especially for those of you who struggle with communication, to start implementing this tip is to basically allow your spouse to finish whatever they're saying and say the statement, so what I'm hearing you say is, and tell them exactly what you heard them say. And they have a minute or two to respond and say, yes, you heard me right, or no, that's not what I'm saying. Because honestly, like for us, all of us kind of perceive life differently, and we may perceive different situations or challenges in a different way. And this is why many couples say, they just don't get me. They don't understand me. This is frustrating. I keep telling them, and it's like it's flying over their head. But it could be that you're using the same questions to approach the same issue, and you're expecting a different result when in reality, maybe even if they're saying or using specific words, they may not necessarily mean what you think that they mean.
Right.
So,
and really the lack of communication isn't always about not talking. It's about the context.
Yeah.
It's about the timing. And so not only when you choose to talk, but how long you're choosing to talk. And a practice like echoing is going to take a little bit more intentionality. You're going to slow down your communication with one another, because most of the time we've got our fists high and our, arrows ready to blaze in defense of ourselves. So when they're talking to us, we are already editing what it is we're going to say in response to defend ourselves.
That's right.
Instead, when you invoke this strategy of echoing, you're giving some time to actually listen, to hear, and not just respond. And then you're going to give yourself a breather, a 1-2 count, and allow yourself to reframe it in a way that you understand it and perceive it, and give it back to them. So what I hear you saying is, and then repeat it back, and then give them the opportunity to say, yes, that's what I mean, or no, it's not. And it's not just about repeating the exact words that they're saying. It's about rephrasing it in your own way, because you want to make sure you understand it from your context and that they understand that you understand it. I know it may feel complicated, but it's actually a very simple practice that will help you figure out where you are miscommunicating. And in particular, if what you say back to them does not resonate with them, you can wrestle a little bit with the context before you start wrestling with the outcome. Most of the time we start jumping into the outcome without understanding if what we are saying is actually perceived correctly.
Correct. And I'm going to finish this segment off with a scripture from James 1:19-20. It says, let every person be quick to hear, slow to speak, slow to anger, for the anger of man does not produce the righteousness of God. That. And the thing is that whenever we're really quick to respond, we oftentimes, like Ryan said, we already are on the defensive. We're just preparing in our mind the words to say to defend ourselves versus what is this person saying? Why are they saying what they're saying? And am I truly understanding them? And I think it sounds very elementary, but if you practice and do this intentionally every single day to learn how to communicate, it'll be second nature, because you'll actually start learning the heart of your spouse.
Yes.
And that's the challenge. Most people don't take the time to understand why the person responds the way they do. But if you take the time to do this strategy, which is the echoing, you'll actually understand the person, like why they do what they do.
Yes.
And the next time you come across a challenge, you're like, you know what? I feel like my spouse would actually feel this way about this situation. And that's how you mature over the years. You'll pick up on those little things, and eventually you don't even have to necessarily ask your spouse about those little details, but it's like you're going to be in sync about specific situations and challenges that you may come across with.
And so many times we get infuriated very quickly and offended when that's not the context from which our spouse is speaking to begin with. We watch couples every time they come in for mediation or counseling, and I immediately know while the one spouse is speaking, the other one has put up the brick wall. You can sense it in their body language, the energy they're projecting outward.
Eyebrows, their eyes.
And most of the time I'll say, hold up, stop. Are you listening to what they're saying? And even clicking and checking them back in allows them. But without us there, they have to come up with a strategy to be able to do that themselves. And so echoing, we found, is a good thing, good practice for couples to do outside of sort of a more professional environment. But that was our marriage strategy of the week. We hope you implement it. And if you do, let us know. Shoot us a DM and make sure to follow us on Instagram and Facebook at More Most Forever, where you can get marriage strategies, not just every week, but every day. We have a whole host of marriage quotes and reels and little short clips that we post there every week. So follow us on those platforms, Instagram, Facebook, at More Most Forever, for all of your marriage strategies.